Today we're going to be talking about 5 things that I really love taking with me on my last backcountry rafting trip. So be sure to stay tuned. On any backcountry rafting trip, there are some things that you're going to take no matter where you're going or how long you're going for. These are things like paddle, life jacket, comfortable clothes that you don't mind getting wet or wearing around camp once you stop, and a raft. This video is going to go over none of those things. Today I'm just going to talk about some things that I specifically brought with me that have really changed these backcountry rafting trips for me. They made it easier for me, they've made it more comfortable, they've just made it an all-around more enjoyable time. Now, I didn't start out with these things the first time I went. In fact, the first time that my buddies and I went on this backcountry rafting trip, we were grossly under and over prepared at the same time. So these are things that I've kind of refined over the course of several rafting trips. Now, these are presented in no particular order. They're just 5 things that I really enjoyed. All right, the first and probably biggest game changer out of all of the equipment that I take with me or have gotten over the years for these rafting trips would be these. These are the water shoes that I use. And these are known as the Astral. That's the name of the company. It says Astral on there. They're known as the Astral Hyaks. It's like kayak. It's instead of a K-A at the beginning, though, it's an H-I, the Hyak. These are made for things like kayaking, whitewater rafting, doing basically anything that you'd be doing in the river. I've even heard in some of the reviews, some people were saying that they were using these to go fly fishing in and things like that, because the great thing about these is they have really grippy bottom. They've got kind of this soft rubber bottom to them that have, if you can look really closely, I'll try and hold it up there. When I bend it, you can see that there are these grooves that are in the treads themselves that kind of open up. And what that does is it helps you get a better grip and kind of creates a suction cup like effect when you're walking on rocks or things like that in the river. They drain, so they've got a drain in the front of them right here. They've got 3 holes right there, and then they've got a drain in the back. There's a little hole right there. So these have been great. They are something that I see myself using for many years to come. This is what they look like after, gosh, now like 6 trips. They look like this, and so really easy to clean too. So if you got a ton of mud or anything on them, I just run them under the water and they clean right up really easily. Okay. So the second thing that I want to go over with you and that has really changed my experience on these backcountry rafting trips is my dry bag. I have a couple of these. I have, this one is the 65 liter. This is the Sea to Summit Big River. It comes in different sizes. You search this, somewhere on Amazon or look it up at REI or like any outdoor store, you'll find something like this. It's made out of nylon. It's very strong. It's tear resistant and can get beat up pretty well. I got this after the first year that we went on this trip because I was like, I'm not fooling around with the dry bags that we rented. We had rented these dry bags and seal at the top didn't keep, even though we, followed, rolled it down at least 3 times, all that kind of stuff. The dry bags we had rented got completely waterlogged. And given, we capsized a couple times on that, more than a couple times on that first trip, a dry bag that, is being advertised as to be taken out on rapids and things like that, I kind of feel like it should be able to get in the water and still keep your stuff dry. And that's what this dry bag has been able to do. It has been amazing. It's very high quality. I've used it now for the last 3 years. I have a smaller one. I have, I think it's the 30 or 35 liters, so one that's about half this size. I ended up using my larger one because I was having to take some of the cooking stuff and some of the food that we were all sharing. And so I just opted to bring the larger one. I didn't even fill it up all the way. There was still, plenty of space, but just, better safe than sorry in case anybody needs to throw their stuff in here. I've never ever had a problem with the seal that it has on here. It's got these hooks on it and things like that. I'll probably do maybe a little more in-depth review of this and detail it a little bit more. But this was another thing that really has changed the game for me. All right, so third, this one is actually something that I didn't get for this purpose, but kind of realized that it might work for these rafting trips. This is another Sea to Summit product. This is their Thermalite Reactor, which is just the general name for their sleeping bag liners. It's a fleece liner, and it's a sleeping bag liner. I'm going to pull it out. It comes with this little stuff sack, so it actually stuffs down to really, really small. Let's see size of it there, pretty great. It's a 6 foot long sleeping bag liner, or it's a little more than 6 feet. It says the max user height should be around 6 feet. I'm 6'3", and it still works for me. It's made out of fleece, and it's like a big full body sweater. It's a Snuggie basically, without armholes. Well, the great thing about this is that it actually doubles as a summer sleeping bag because it's so light, and during the summer, depending on where you're going, you don't need that much warmth for your sleeping bag because it doesn't get that cold at night. We went during the summer, and so this ended up working actually just fine. What we usually do on the rafting trip is we actually just sleep in our rafts, and then we would just, bring a blanket, a sleeping bag with us, and then sleep in that in the raft. And, no covering, looking at the stars. It's beautiful. It's a really cool way. It's like you're hammock camping, but just on the ground. The problem that I encountered this year was the bottom of my raft popped. The first day, about an hour or so after our lunch stops. And what that meant was I had no padding. So this actually did get a little bit cold that night just sleeping in this. But the other thing was that I didn't do that I had brought with me. I had brought my leggings, and I had brought some other athletic shorts to wear around camp. I didn't change into either of those when I went to sleep, and I just stayed in my river shorts that I brought with me. They were dry, but they're not super warm or anything like that. But even still, I was still able to comfortably sleep. I really, really enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to actually using this as like a backpacking sleeping bag. It's super lightweight, and it stuffs away really easily. Number 4, I don't actually have it anymore. This one I've actually gotten rid of since we got back from the trip a couple weeks ago. What it was, gloves. Half finger gloves. Those were a huge, huge benefit having on the river when you're paddling. First year, and I think the second year, I don't think I got the gloves until the last year. First couple times we went on this trip, didn't use gloves at all. And I ended up getting blisters all right here. The first day, just from paddling and having the paddles, rub up against your thumbs. It was awful because it made the second day of paddling so painful, and you end up pulling the paddle in like weird ways, and you're just concentrating on that instead of concentrating on what's going on in the river. So I ended up getting these half finger gloves that they were Neosport. I don't know if that's the company name or the name of the gloves. I'm not sure. I'll put that somewhere on the screen. But they were a huge game changer. They had I think it was a faux leather palm, and then they had like a stretchy spandex basically backing to the glove itself. And they had like little tiny holes in the palm and the fingers area to give you, I guess, like more airflow and things like that. Because they were just sport gloves is what they were advertised for. They weren't like necessarily advertised for kayaking. They were awesome. They solved the problem I got them for, you know, to not get blisters. They were pretty cheap though. And what ended up happening this year, by the end of it, the palms had started to rip out, and it was the holes themselves. I started noticing, and they said, you know, being soaked in water, they started to expand a lot, and they'd start to, you know, fray and start to tear. And so by the end of the trip, the palm was coming off of one of them almost entirely, and the other one, all of the holes in the fingers were just like pretty much ripped out. And they worked great for 2 years, and using them from, you know, not really something maybe they were supposed to be used for, you know, because they're just soaked in water all day long. But they solved their problem. So really, yeah, gloves really, really important to have. Probably going to get some more. Probably will get some better ones this time. Maybe ones that are actually meant for, you know, whitewater kayaking and rafting. So that's why I don't have them anymore, because I threw them out. Number 5. This hunk of metal right here. What this is, it's a steel cooking pot. This is the Stanley, I think it's called the Stanley Cooker and Cup Set. What it came with these 2 green insulated plastic little cups. I think they're like 10 ounces or something like that stack and go inside of this. So what, you know, I think what they're thinking is like you can boil stuff in here and, you know, make some tea or coffee and then pour that out in the cups and everything. However, I didn't use the cups, but I did just bring this because I love this thing. And what I love about this is it's just the right size to fit part of my cook kit. I got some Kleenex in there, you know, I got some, this is the actual stove that I have. This is an MSR Pocket Rocket, I think is what they call it. But they're a little fold-up stove that goes on the fuel canisters themselves, so that the fuel canister becomes your stove. That fits in there. It's a great little piece of kit. It just, you know, fits all this stuff inside of it really easy. It's steel, and even though it's steel, it's pretty lightweight. Weight isn't a huge issue when you're on the river. This just fits really easily. I put it into my stuff sack.